I stood frozen in the middle of Harold Bennett's living room, my face burning hot. The laugh that came from his throat wasn't the polite kind you hear at dinner parties. It was loud, cruel, meant to cut deep. "How do you even survive on that pathetic paycheck?" he said, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "You're absolutely worthless, boy." My wife, Olivia, sat on the couch, her gaze fixed on her hands. She didn't defend me. She didn't even look up. My hands trembled at my sides. The shock hit first, then anger, then something worse, betrayal. What the hell just happened? The thought screamed through my head as I stood there, unable to move. My name is Liam Carter, and this was the moment I realized my father-in-law would never respect me. Not because I hadn't earned it, but because he'd decided long ago that I wasn't worth it. Harold's laughter echoed in my ears as I walked out of that house. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell back. I just left. But something inside me shifted that night. Something cold and determined. He thought I was worthless. He had no idea what was coming. The signs had been there for months, maybe longer. Small comments that felt like paper cuts, easy to ignore at first, but they added up. Harold would look at my 15-year-old sedan and shake his head with a sad smile. "Still driving that thing?" he'd say. "A man should take pride in what he drives." At family dinners, he'd ask about my job at the accounting firm, then talk over my answer to brag about his own real estate empire. "Commercial properties, Liam. That's where real money lives." When Olivia and I bought our small apartment, he'd walked through it once, touched the kitchen counter, and said, "Cozy." The word sounded like an insult. I told myself he was just old-fashioned, that his generation measured success differently. But deep down, I knew the truth. Harold Bennett looked at me and saw failure. He saw someone unworthy of his daughter. Someone who would never measure up to the life he'd built. And maybe, for a while, I believed him. Maybe I started seeing myself through his eyes. That was the worst part, not his cruelty, but how easily I'd let it seep into my own head. That night, I sat across from Olivia at our small kitchen table. The apartment felt too quiet. "We need to talk about what happened," I said carefully. She looked up from her phone, her expression guarded. "Dad didn't mean it like that. He just worries about us. He called me worthless, Olivia. In front of you." She sighed, setting her phone down. "He's been stressed about business. The market's been tough lately." I stared at her, waiting for the part where she defended me. It never came. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long what? How long has he been saying things like this behind my back?" Her silence was the answer. She looked away, biting her lip. "He just wants what's best for me. For us. He thinks you could be more ambitious." The words hit like a punch to the stomach. Not just that Harold had been poisoning our marriage for months, but that Olivia had let him. That she'd sat there listening to her father tear me down and never once told me. I nodded slowly, pushing my chair back. "I see. Liam, don't be like this." But I was already walking to the bedroom. I needed space. To think. To breathe. To figure out what came next. Work became my refuge, which felt strange. My job at Morrison & Associates wasn't glamorous. I was a senior accountant, not a partner. But I was good at what I did. I understood numbers in a way that felt almost intuitive. The patterns, the inconsistencies, the story hidden in every ledger. Mr. Morrison, my boss, called me into his office 2 days after. The incident at Harold's house. He was in his 60s, gray-haired, always wearing suspenders. "Liam, I've noticed you seem distracted lately," he said, not unkindly. "Everything all right at home?" I forced a smile. "Just some family stuff. Nothing that affects my work." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "You're one of my best people. Don't let outside problems dim that." As I left his office, Tyler, a CO worker around my age, caught up with me in the hallway. "Hey, you okay? You seemed off." I shrugged. "Personal stuff." Tyler lowered his voice. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but I've seen your work. You're better than you think you are. Don't let anyone tell you different." His words stayed with me. Maybe I'd been so focused on Harold's opinion that I'd forgotten my own worth. Maybe it was time to remember. Harold's manipulation wasn't obvious at first. He worked in suggestions, not commands. At Sunday dinner, he'd casually mention job openings at companies he knew. "They're looking for someone in finance. Real career track, not just accounting." The pause before accounting spoke volumes. He'd pull Olivia aside, their voices low but audible. "Is he thinking about the future? About giving you the life you deserve?" I'd catch her looking at me. Afterward, her expression conflicted, questioning. "He never CTLY told her to leave me. He was too smart for that. Instead, he planted seeds of doubt, watered them with subtle comments, and waited for them to grow. The worst part? I could see it happening but felt powerless to stop it. How do you fight against whispers? Against insinuations? How do you prove you're enough when someone's decided you're not? I started staying late at work, not because I had to, but because going home meant facing Olivia's growing distance. The apartment that once felt like ours now felt like a waiting room. Like we were both holding our breath for something to change. I just didn't know what that change would be yet. 3 weeks later, I landed something big. Morrison and Associates had been pitching for the Westfield Corporation account for months, a major logistics company needing a complete financial restructuring. Mr. Morrison assigned me to lead the proposal. I worked on it for 2 weeks straight, running numbers, finding efficiencies, building a model that would save them nearly $2 million in the first year alone. When we presented, the Westfield executives looked impressed. "This is exceptional work," their CFO said, looking directly at me. "Who built this model?" "Liam Carter," Mr. Morrison said proudly. "One of our finest. We won the account." That night, Olivia suggested we celebrate at her parents' house. I should have known better. Harold sat at the head of the table, barely listening as I explained the project. When I finished, he waved his hand dismissively. "Accounting work. Moving numbers around on spreadsheets." He turned to Olivia. "Your cousin James just closed a $20 million property deal. Now that's real business." The celebration died in my throat. Olivia touched my hand under the table, but the gesture felt empty. Harold had poisoned even this victory. As we drove home, I realized something. Harold wasn't going to change. No amount of success would ever be enough for him. But maybe I was done trying to prove myself to someone who'd already made up his mind. The shift came from an unexpected place. Olivia's best friend, Claire, invited us to dinner at her apartment. She was a lawyer, sharp and direct, and she'd never particularly liked Harold. During dessert, while Olivia was in the bathroom, Claire leaned forward. I need to say something, and it's none of my business, but I'm saying it anyway. I waited. Your father in law is a bully. I've watched him tear you down for 2 years, and I'm tired of it. You're a good man, Liam. Don't let him convince you otherwise. Her words cracked something open inside me. What am I supposed to do? He's her father. Document it. Every insult, every manipulation. Not for revenge, but to protect yourself. Men like Harold don't stop. They escalate. When Olivia returned, the conversation shifted, but Claire's advice stayed with me. That night, I started a file on my laptop. Every comment Harold had made. Every time he'd undermined me in front of Olivia. Every subtle manipulation. I wasn't sure why I was doing it. Or what I'd use it for. But it felt like taking back some control. Like I was finally doing something instead of just enduring. Harold might not respect me, but I was done being his victim. I was done playing defense. It was time to start playing chess. The next humiliation came at Harold's annual charity gala. He hosted it every year at the country club, a black tie event where he could show off his wealth and connections. Olivia insisted we attend. I wore my only suit, the one I'd bought for our wedding. Harold wore a custom tuxedo that probably cost more than my car. Halfway through dinner, Harold stood to give a speech. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about the importance of community, then gestured around the room. I'm blessed to be surrounded by successful people. Real achievers. His eyes landed on me for just a second, and he smiled. Though not everyone here has reached their full potential yet. The table went quiet. A few people glanced at me. Olivia's face went pale. But I didn't react. I smiled politely, took a sip of water, and made a mental note. Another entry for my file. After dinner, I overheard 2 of Harold's business associates talking. Who was he talking about? The son-in-law. The accountant. Harold thinks he's dead weight. Poor guy. Poor guy. The words followed me home. But something had changed. The humiliation didn't crush me anymore. It fueled me. Harold thought he was breaking me down. He had no idea he was building me up into something harder, sharper, more determined. My godmother, Catherine Walsh, died when I was 20-3. She'd been my mother's best friend, a woman who never married or had children of her own. Instead, she poured her energy into her career as a corporate lawyer, building a quiet fortune through SM art, investments and careful planning. I'd been close to her growing up. She taught me chess. Always saying, life is about thinking 3 moves ahead, Liam. Never just react. At her funeral, her attorney mentioned she'd left me something in her will, but the estate was complex and would take years to settle. I'd forgotten about it, honestly. Life moved on. I got married, started my career, and Catherine's inheritance became a distant memory. But one night, unable to sleep after another tense dinner with Harold, I found myself going through old papers in our storage closet. At the bottom of a box, I found a letter Catherine had written me years ago. Dear Liam, by the time you read this, you'll be older. Hopefully wiser. I've set aside something for your future. Not because you need it, but because you've earned it. Be patient. Good things come to those who plan. The letter was dated 3 months before her death. The next morning, I called her attorney's office. It was time to find out what Catherine had left me. The meeting with Catherine's attorney, Mr. Phillips, happened on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. His office was in an old building downtown, the kind with high ceilings and wood paneling. That smelled like old books. He was in his 70s, wearing a three-peaky suit, and he smiled. When I walked in. Liam Carter. I'd been wondering when you'd reach out. He pulled out a thick folder. Your godmother's estate has finally cleared probate. It took longer than expected. Some of her investments were quite complex. And my heart started beating faster. What did she leave me? Mr. Phillips slid papers across the desk. 3 properties, a commercial building downtown currently leased to a law firm, a duplex in the historical district, and a warehouse in the industrial zone. Additionally, there's a portfolio of stocks and bonds currently valued at approximately $4.2 million. The room tilted. I read the papers again, certain I'd misunderstood. 4 million? 4.2, give or take. The property's GE narrate about $30,000 monthly in rental income. Catherine was quite shrewd with her investments. I sat back, stunned. Why didn't anyone tell me? She specified the information should only be released when you inquired. She wanted you to seek it out when you were ready. I left that office in a daze, the papers clutched in my hand. Harold thought I was worthless. He had no idea I was now wealthier than him. I didn't tell Olivia immediately. I needed time to think, to plan. But that Sunday at dinner, when Harold made another snide comment about my little accounting job, I smiled. Actually, Harold, I've been thinking about new opportunities. He raised an EY eyebrow. Oh? Finally ready to be ambitious? Something like that. I've come into some assets recently. I'm considering my options. The look on his face was priceless, confusion mixed with dismissal. Assets? What kind of assets? Real estate, mostly. Some investments. I kept my tone casual, almost bored. Harold laughed. Real estate? You can barely afford your apartment. Things change. I met his eyes steadily. For the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his expression. He didn't believe me, but the confidence in my voice made him wonder. Olivia looked between us, confused. On the drive home, she asked, "What were you talking about?" "What assets?" "My godmother's estate finally settled. She left me some things." "What things?" I told her. She went completely silent, staring at me like I was a stranger. $4 million? Liam, why didn't you tell me? I just found out myself. I'm still processing it. But that wasn't entirely true. I'd known for 3 days. I just hadn't been ready to share it yet. Not until I'd figured out my next move. At work, things were shifting too. Mr. Morrison called me into his office with news. The Westfield account is expanding. They want us to handle all their subsidiaries. It's a massive undertaking, and I'd like you to head the team. You mean as a partner? I asked carefully. He smiled. Senior partner, yes. It comes with a significant raise in profit sharing. You've earned it, Liam. I accepted immediately. The promotion came with a new office, a substantial salary increase, and most importantly, respect. My colleagues congratulated me. Tyler took me out for drinks to celebrate. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just surviving. When I told Harold at the next family dinner, his reaction was predictable. Senior partner at a mid-sized firm. That's nice. He said it the way you'd compliment a child's drawing. But Olivia's mother, Patricia, spoke up. That's wonderful. Liam. You should be very proud. Harold shot her a look, but she ignored him. Something was shifting in the family dynamic. Harold's control was starting to crack. Later, as we left, Patricia hugged me. Don't let him diminish you, she whispered. You're doing well. The validation from her meant more than I expected. Maybe I wasn't alone in this after all. The real turning point came at Harold's company anniversary celebration. He'd owned Bennett Properties for 30 years, and he'd rented out an entire restaurant to celebrate. All his business associates attended, dressed in their finest. Olivia and I arrived separately. She'd been helping her mother set up. Harold was holding court by the bar, telling stories about his early deals. When he saw me, he waved me over with a smirk. Liam. Come tell everyone about your promotion. What was it again? Junior partner? Senior partner, I corrected. Calmly. At Morrison and Associates. Right. Small firm, but steady work. He turned to his friends. Not everyone can handle high-stakes real estate. Some people are better suited for safer careers. One of his associates, a man named Vincent who owned half the downtown buildings, spoke up. Morrison and Associates? I know that firm. They handle the Westfield account now, don't they? Yes, I said. I lead that team. Vincent looked impressed. Westfield's a major account. Good work. Harold's smile tightened. Before he could redirect the conversation, Vincent continued. Actually, I might need to talk to you about some financial restructuring. Could I get your card? I handed it to him. Harold's face went red. The rest of the evening, people kept approaching me, asking about my work. Harold's celebration had become my networking event. When we left, he didn't say goodbye. But his fury was obvious in every rigid line of his posture. That night, Olivia finally cracked. We were getting ready for bed when she turned to me. Tears in her eyes. I don't know what to do anymore. I waited, giving her space. My father. He's always been difficult. But watching him treat you like this, and realizing I let it happen. She sat on the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. I'm so sorry, Liam. I should have defended you. I should have stood up to him months ago. I sat beside her. Why didn't you? Because he's my father. Because I kept thinking he'd come around eventually. Because it was easier to stay quiet than to fight. She looked at me. But I see now how much damage that silence did. To you. To us. For the first time in months, I felt like I was talking to my wife again. Not Harold's daughter, but the woman I'd married. What do you want? Olivia? I asked quietly. I want us to be okay. I want to stop letting him control our lives. She took a shaky breath. And I think we need to set boundaries. Real ones. It wasn't a complete solution. Years of damage couldn't be fixed in one conversation. But it was a start. A crack in the wall Harold had built between us. That night, Olivia fell asleep holding my hand. It was the first time in weeks we'd touched without tension between us. The next piece of information came from Claire. She called me one afternoon, her voice tight. I need to tell you something about Harold. It's not pleasant. We met at a coffee shop near her office. She slid a folder across the table. A client of mine used D to work with Harold. 15 years ago. Partnership deal that went bad. Harold screwed him over, kept all the profits, left him with the debts. I opened the folder. Inside were court documents, emails, evidence of Harold's betrayal. He's done this before? I asked. Multiple times. He has a pattern. Builds relationships, gains trust, then exploits people when it benefits him. Claire leaned forward. He sees people as tools, Liam. Including his own daughter. You need to understand what you're dealing with. I studied the documents carefully. Harold Bennett wasn't just arrogant. He was calculating, ruthless, willing to destroy anyone who got in his way. The man who called me worthless had left a trail of ruined partnerships behind him. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Claire's expression was serious. Because he's going to escalate. Men like him don't handle losing control well. And you're winning now. That makes you dangerous to him. She was right. I could feel it building, Harold's anger. His desperation to put me back in my place. But now I had information. Now I had leverage. And I was 3 moves ahead. The first attack came through work. One morning, I arrived to find Mr. Morrison looking troubled. Liam, someone filed an ethics complaint against you with the state accounting board. My stomach dropped. What kind of complaint? I found out you've been misrepresenting client financials for personal gain. The accusation was absurd. I kept meticulous records. But it still required an investigation. I'd have to provide documentation. Undergo review, defend myself against baseless accusations. I knew immediately who was behind it. Harold had business connections everywhere. He'd made one call to the right person, and now I was fighting for my professional reputation. But he'd underestimated me. Every file, every transaction, every piece of work I'd done was documented and backed up. I spent 3 days compiling evidence, showing my work was beyond reproach. Tyler helped, working late with me to organize everything. Whoever did this doesn't know who they're messing with, he said. Your work is bulletproof. The state board reviewed the complaint and dismissed it within a week. Clearly malicious, the investigator told me. We see this. Sometimes, jealous competitors trying to damage reputations. You're completely cleared. I filed a counter-complaint about the false accusation. And I started building my own case against Harold. If he wanted war, I'd give him one. My countermove was subtle. Harold's company, Bennett Properties, leased one of their office buildings from a property management firm. I happened to know that firm was struggling financially. They'd been clients of Morrison and Associates before. Through my godmother's estate, I now owned the building that housed that management firm's headquarters. I restructured their lease terms, gave them better rates, and in return, asked for a small favor. When Bennett Properties' lease came up for renewal, the management firm raised their rent by 30%. Market rate, perfectly legal, standard business practice. Harold was furious. He called the management firm, demanded explanations, threatened to sue. They calmly explained the increase was justified by current market conditions. If he didn't like it, he could move. But moving would cost him more in the long run: relocation expenses, downtime, losing a prime location. He was trapped. I heard about it through Olivia, who'd overheard him ranting to Patricia. Someone else manipulating the market, he'd said. Trying to squeeze me out. He had no idea that someone was me. That was the beauty of it. The revenge was invisible. I was dismantling his empire piece by piece, and he couldn't see the hand behind it. 3 moves ahead, just like Catherine taught me. The next betrayal came from someone I hadn't expected. Olivia's brother, Marcus, called, asking to meet for lunch. He was 2 years younger than her, worked in Harold's company, and had always been polite but distant with me. Over sandwiches, he got straight to the point. Dad wants me to talk to you. He thinks you're trying to sabotage him. I kept my expression neutral. Sabotage him how? The lease increase on his office building. He's convinced you're behind it somehow. Marcus studied me carefully. Are you? I could have denied it. But something in Marcus's expression told me he wasn't there to attack me. He looked tired. Conflicted. What do you think? I asked instead. He sighed. I think Dad's made a lot of enemies over the years. And I think he's reaping what he sowed. He paused. Look, I'm not here to defend him. I've watched how he treats you, and it's wrong. But he's my father, and he's spiraling. Whatever you're doing, he knows someone's coming for him. And you're warning me? I'm telling you to be careful. When Dad feels cornered, he gets dangerous. Marcus left cash for his half of the lunch and stood. For what it's worth, I don't blame you. Just watch your back. After he left, I sat there thinking. Marcus's warning was genuine. Which meant Harold knew he was losing. And Claire was right, that made him dangerous. 2 weeks later, Mr. Phillips called me back to his office. There's one more thing from Catherine's estate I didn't mention before. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker than the first. Catherine purchased shares in several companies over the years. One of them was Bennett Properties. My heart started racing. How many shares? 30-8%. She bought them gradually over 15 years, always through shell companies, so Harold never knew who his investor was. Mr. Phillips smiled. Catherine told me once she didn't trust Harold Bennett. Said he was the kind of man who'd sell his soul for profit. She bought into his company specifically to keep an eye on him. 30-8%. That's not controlling interest. No, but Harold only owns 40-2% himself. The remaining 20% is split between small investors. Mr. Phillips leaned back. If you wanted to, you could buy out those small investors. It wouldn't take much, most of them are passive shareholders who'd sell for the right price. The implication was clear. I could take control of Harold's company. The business he'd built over 30 years could become mine with the right moves. Think about it, Mr. Phillips said. But don't take too long. I have a feeling Harold's going to figure out something's wrong soon. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay awake, calculating costs, strategies, timelines. By morning, I'd made my decision. It was time to make my final move. I spent the next 3 weeks quietly buying up the remaining shares of Bennett Properties. Used Catherine's investment portfolio to fund it. The small shareholders were easy, most were happy to sell at a 20% premium. Within a month, I owned 50-1% of Harold Bennett's company. I was the majority shareholder. The company he'd built, the empire he'd used to look down on me, was now mine to control. I called an emergency shareholder meeting. Harold arrived furious, demanding to know who'd called it. When I walked in, his face went white. What are you doing here? I'm the majority shareholder. Harold. I called the meeting. You could hear a pin drop. His lawyer started frantically checking papers. Harold's face went from white to red. That's impossible. I know all my shareholders. You knew them, I corrected. They sold to me. I laid out the documentation. Every share purchase, every transfer, all legal and documented. Harold's hands shook as he read through them. This is a hostile takeover. No, this is business. Something you taught me about, remember? Real business, not just accounting. I looked around the room at the board members. As majority shareholder, I'm exercising my right to restructure company leadership. Effective immediately, I'm appointing new management. Harold stood, his chair scraping. You can't do this. I already have. You can stay on in a consulting capacity if you'd like. Or you can leave. Either way, you no longer control this company. The humiliation in his eyes mirrored the very moment he'd made me feel worthless. But I felt no satisfaction. Just cold finality. The news spread fast. By evening, everyone in Harold's social circle knew. The man who'd mocked me for being broke now answered to me. His business associates called, confused, wanting to understand what happened. I took the calls professionally, assuring them nothing would change in their partnerships. I kept Harold's management team, promoted from within, and brought in fresh perspective where needed. The company didn't need destruction. It needed better leadership. 2 days later, there was a charity event at the same country club, where Harold had humiliated me months earlier. I attended with Olivia. When we walked in, the whispers started immediately. Harold was there with Patricia, his face stony. Throughout the night, people approached me with congratulations, questions, opportunities. Vincent, the real estate developer, pulled me aside. That was quite a move, taking over Bennett Properties. Ballsy. It was necessary, I said simply. Harold and I had philosophical differences about how the company should run. I respect that. If you're looking to expand, I have some projects that might interest you. Before I left, I walked past Harold's table. He looked up, and for the first time since I'd known him, I saw fear in his eyes. Not anger, not arrogance. Fear of irrelevance. I didn't gloat. Didn't say anything cruel. I just nodded politely and kept walking. The victory didn't need words. It spoke for itself. Harold's last attempt at manipulation came through Olivia, just like Claire had predicted. He called her crying, saying I destroyed him, that I'd betrayed the family, that she needed to choose between her husband and her father. Olivia came home from that conversation shaking. He wants me to convince you to give back the company. I looked at her carefully. What do you want? She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I want you to know. I'm on your side. Whatever you decide. And your father? My father made his choices. He spent years tearing you down, and when you succeeded anyway, he tried to destroy you. Horror. Voice cracked. I love him, but I won't let him do this anymore. Not to you. Not to us. She called Harold back with me beside her. Didi, I love you. But Liam is my husband, and he didn't do anything wrong. He just played the same game you've been playing for years. And he won. Harold tried to argue, to guilt her, to make her feel responsible for his failures. But Olivia stood firm. When she hung up, she was crying, but her hand was steady. That might be the hardest thing I've ever done, she whispered. I held her. I'm proud of you. What happens now? Now we build something better. Together. The final board meeting at Bennett Properties was scheduled for a Monday morning. Harold attended, as was his right as a minority shareholder, but he sat in the back row instead of at the head of the table. I presented the new strategic direction, ethical partnerships, transparent dealings, investing back into the communities where we operated. Everything Harold's leadership hadn't been. One board member, an older man who'd worked with Harold for years, spoke up. This is a dramatic shift from how we've operated. It's necessary, I replied. This company has a reputation for cutting corners and burning bridges. That ends now. We're going to build something sustainable. Something people trust. Harold stood up. You're destroying everything I built. No, I said calmly. I'm fixing it. Your way built a company. My way will build a legacy. The vote was unanimous. New direction, new policies, new standards. As everyone filed out, Harold approached me. His face was drawn. Aged 10 years in a month. I underestimated you, he said quietly. Yes, you did. I never thought you'd amount to anything. I know. That was your mistake, not mine. He nodded. Slowly, something like acceptance crossing his face. My daughter loves you. That's the only thing that matters now. It wasn't an apology. But it was acknowledgement. Sometimes, that's all you get. Harold left the building that day and never came back. He retired quietly, selling his remaining shares to me at fair market value. His empire was gone. But he was still breathing. That was more mercy than he'd shown others. 6 months later, Olivia and I sat on the balcony of our new home, a beautiful house with a view of the city, bought with my inheritance money. Bennett Properties was thriving under new management. My partnership at Morrison & Associates was solid. Life was finally stable. Olivia looked over at me. Do you ever regret it? Taking over his company? No, I said honestly. He would have destroyed me if I'd let him. This way, at least something good came from it. He's different now. Quieter. I think the loss humbled him. Maybe. Or maybe he's just too tired to fight anymore. She leaned against my shoulder. Thank you for not giving up on us. On me. I didn't make it easy. You found your way back. That's what matters. We sat in comfortable silence as the Siouan set over the city. The man who'd called me worthless was now irrelevant to my life. I didn't need his approval anymore. I'd found my own. Patricia still called regularly, proud of how things had turned out. Marcus was thriving in his new role at the company, finally free from Harold's shadow. Even Tyler got promoted. After the Westfield account expanded again, everything had fallen into place, not through revenge, but through patience, strategy, and refusing to accept someone else's definition of my worth. A year after taking over Bennett Properties, I received a letter. It was from Harold. Handwritten on expensive stationery. Liam, I won't apologize for how I treated you. That's not who I am. But I will acknowledge that I was wrong about you. You proved yourself in ways I never expected. My daughter chose well, even if I couldn't see it. The company is in better hands now than it was under me. That's hard to admit, but it's true. I spent my life building an empire, but I never learned what you understood from the beginning. Success without respect is just noise. You have both now. Use them wisely. Harold. I read the letter 3 times, then filed it away. It wasn't the apology I'd once wanted, but it was recognition. And maybe that was enough. That evening, I stood in my office at Bennett Properties, looking at Catherine's photo on my desk. She'd known, somehow, that I'd need this inheritance. Not for the money itself, but for the power it represented. The power to stand up to bullies. The power to protect myself. The power to build something meaningful. Thank you, I whispered to her photo. My name is Liam Carter. My father-in-law once mocked me for being broke, called me worthless in front of his daughter. He thought he'd broken me. Instead, he pushed me to become the man I was always capable of being. Now I run his company. Now I control his legacy. And now, finally, I understand what Catherine tried to teach me. Success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right.